Welcome to the first in a new series following Uno, one of our broody hens, as she incubates, hatches and raises her chicks. And what we're going to be doing is giving you all the information to show you what we do to support her through that process. Welcome to English Country Life. My name's Fiona, and together with my lovely husband Hugh, we run a small holding homestead here in Lincolnshire in the UK. And as you can see, I'm stood in an area with a coop which is fenced off from the main flock. But why am I doing that? Because there's no chickens in sight. Well, we breed Buff Orpington chickens, and inside this coop we've got Uno, one of our Buff Orpington hens, who started to incubate some fertilised eggs. And because this is the first in a series, what I want to do is explain first of all how we collect the fertilised eggs and store them ready for incubation, and also why we have Uno in a separate coop in a fenced off area. So let's get started and have a look at collecting fertilised eggs for incubation. There are two ways of obtaining fertilised eggs for hatching. You can either keep a breeding cockerel in your flock, or you can buy fertilised eggs through the post. We choose to have a breeding cockerel, and we can see him mating the hens, which is called treading, so we know he's doing his job. To give us more certainty, before the broody hen season begins, we test the fertility of him, and there's a link above if you're interested in that process. Having tested our current cockerel, we're sure that the vast majority of eggs we collect will be fertile, as he's tested at just over 95% fertility. Once I've collected the eggs, I then need to store them while I wait for a broody hen to actually want to incubate the eggs. So how should I store them? Well, all eggs have a more pointed end and a more rounded end, and this is the correct way to store them. So pointy end down, rounded end at the top. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to pop that in a domestic egg box, put it in a room temperature environment, or a kind of coolish room temperature environment. Never put them in the fridge because that will reduce the viability, and they should store really happily for at least 7 days. Now after 7 days, it doesn't mean that the eggs won't be viable, it just means the likelihood of viability drops off one by one. And by the end of week 3, you're going to have a bunch of eggs which aren't going to be viable at all. But for 7 days at least, viability should stay there because the eggs are in a state of suspended animation until they get that heat source of a broody hen to start the incubation process. We give all of our broody hens their own coop and either a run for their brood period or a small fenced off area separate from the rest of their flock. Why? Well, hens by nature try to lay eggs in the same nest. If the other hens can access the coop that Uno is in, they will try and throw her off her nest to lay their eggs, and there's a high risk eggs will be broken. As a result, Uno is getting our Nestera wagon as her brood coop, and we put a temporary fence around the area so she's got some outside space. She's started to brood in another coop, so we'll move her here with some rubber false eggs for 24 hours before we give her some fertilised eggs to incubate. She has these false eggs because sometimes a broody hen won't accept a new coop and will break her brood. If we give her fertilised eggs straight away, they would go to waste, but as you can see, she's settled down beautifully. Now we've moved Uno shortly before dusk, and she'll naturally be sleepy, and she'll have at least 12 hours in the coop with the door closed before the next day, making it more likely that she'll accept this coop. But by the looks of it, that's not going to be a problem. After 24 hours, we know Uno has accepted the coop. She's been sitting diligently on the nest all day, so the first thing we do is take her chicken saddle off. As she's separated from the flock by a fence, the cockerel has no access to her and the saddle isn't necessary. If you haven't seen saddles before, there's a link above to a video that will give you all the information you need. The next job for us is to give Uno her real eggs, and it's simpler than you might think. I pick her up and take her outside the coop, and she's a little bit pecky, but she's actually very good. You can then pick up the false eggs and quickly make a switch to the real eggs. Now the good news is her broody hormones won't let her notice that she's now got more eggs or that they're different. But nonetheless, when we pop her back on the nest, we watch and make sure she's accepted them. But she quickly settles down, wiggles, and settles in to incubate. You'll notice she's got a small feeder and drinker inside the coop. This allows Uno to access food and water during the brood period without leaving the nest. She's settled beautifully, so we're going to leave her in peace but monitor her progress to ensure she stays healthy. Uno has her brood suite. She's got a coop, she's got some outdoor space, she's got a feeder and drinker outside, she's also got a feeder and drinker inside that she can access from the nest without coming out at all. Now you're very welcome to come and join us for this entire series, and we'll be following Uno through her incubation, hatching and raising those chicks to independence. Now if you're inspired to duplicate this process, the one thing we would ask is that before you start, have a plan in place for what's going to happen with any male chicks which are actually hatched, because on average 50% of those youngsters will be male, and it's very difficult to sell them. It's also difficult for exactly the same reasons as it's difficult to sell them, to give them away. So we would encourage you to think before you start what's going to happen to those male chicks. Well, that's Uno settled in her coop, and she's going to be in here for 21 days. Come back next week when what we'll be looking at is Uno's update, see how she's getting on, but we'll also be talking you through how we care for the health of the broody hens while they're going through the incubation period, because they are inside the coop for an incredibly long time, not getting as much exercise, not eating and drinking as much as possible. Now, if you have liked this content, please do take a moment and give us a thumbs up down below. If you're not already a subscriber to the channel, hit subscribe and the bell icon, and you'll get to know of every new video as soon as it's published, and that's a completely free service. If you've got a question for us, just leave it in the comments down below and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But for now, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.